Still going strongly in the closing minutes. Great one by Kevin McAllister! What a goal that is! Delivery's good, there's Hagen. Now McGrillen, he scored!
It's Stokes on a hat-trick! Goal number 3 for Anthony Stokes!
Ralston saw off Robertson and delivered! Sybil scores! That's the goal! That's the moment! Samuel off and running again. Is it going to be the hat-trick? You know it is.
This is Falkirk Daft.
Welcome to Falkirk Daft. It's the last one of the season, Ross. I can't believe it. It's just 45 episodes, Ross. 45.
Bonkers, mate. Bonkers.
We're doing the maths today. Over 75,000 people have listened to this podcast in the last 45 episodes. So thank you so much for that. We really, really appreciate it. This just started off as a brainchild of Ross's, and it's just grown and grown and grown. So thank you so much for that. So we're here to talk about the season as a whole, right? About a month and a bit ago, we're on this podcast. We were saying this could be one of the greatest seasons of all time. At that point, we're on the precipice of that cup final. We had to get past Inverness. You know, the playoff was there in front of us. But a month and a half on, we're obviously sitting here now, still in League One and not in the cup final this weekend. But has it been a bad season when you look at it? Have we improved to a point where we can call this step one and build to glory once more? On this podcast, we're going to answer those questions, look at the highlight, lowlight and turning points of Falkirk Football Club in 2022 and 2023. And we are joined by some friends, Ross, don't you know? Some of our ex-pundits have come on to join us. We have Mr. Craig Cruickshanks. How you doing, Craig?
All right, guys.
We have Scott Steele, who has put himself on this chat as Simon Le Bon after, obviously, in reference to the fact that I went to Duran rather than the Airdrie game. Still a very good decision, in my opinion. All right, Scott?
Just I'll plan a year ahead. If you're going to another gig for the playoffs next year, get me a ticket.
Right, no worries. I will sort that. Pete Moodie's with us as well. How you doing, Pete?
Fine, thanks. You know.
And I'm not going to make any frozen jokes. I promise you. It's Elsa Fantini. How you doing, Elsa?
How you doing, boys?
Good to have you on. Good to have you on. So we've gathered you all together, a bit like the Power Rangers. We're going to go. I don't know why, but I've went immediately to Power Rangers there. I could have went for another reference, but you know, Power Rangers it is. You choose what colour you want to be. But we're going to go across, look back at the season as a whole. I think we just got to go back to the start, really. You know, all for me, this season started with a brilliant occasion at the stadium, the renaming of the South Stand to the Kevin McAllister stand, or the KM7 stand. You know, and that friendly against Kilmarnock, when we all had such optimism, Ross.
There was, and it was quite justified because we'd made some good signings. I'll never forget. Like, it was quite a good day. Remember that day we signed the three boys. There was McGinn, Oliver, and Sean Mackey, and I was like, right, this is it. This is going to be our season. That's a marker down. And I think we were quite right because John McGlynn's got a bit of sun about him as well, and he's won the league before. So, John, I don't think it was misplaced optimism, but obviously we did get a little bit of a lesson that night, and it was a kind of lesson we've seen a few times against higher placed teams, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was that early sense of optimism. I mean, we saw the performance against Kilmarnock, and, you know, I think there was something that came back to haunt us all season was not defending set pieces, which we saw in that game from the off. But there was an optimism just because we had a style and a shape, it looked like, and that obviously continued into the League Cup. Pete, did you notice that immediately when you watched that friendly and into the League Cup?
Yeah, definitely. I would say just with the appointment of John McGlynn, like, I felt he was the right man for the job. He had a lot of experience. His football that he played under Rafe Rovers was really quite entertaining, especially that season when they pipped us to the league in the COVID season. So yeah, the signings that they'd made as well with McGinn and Mackey, Henderson, Donaldson, you know, they all looked pretty strong players for this league. I also thought that McGlynn would have the edge over Dunfermline and Airdrie, with those managers being, you know, less experienced than McGlynn. So yeah, no, I had a lot of optimism going into the season. Yeah, that was
I
shattered.
want to talk about that point a bit later on. But Craig, going into the season, were you optimistic, especially around the recruitment? Was there any worries over the players that he brought in?
Not necessarily worried. I still felt we were miles behind the likes of Airdrie and Montrose, and that's before you add in Queen of the South and Dunfermline. I mean, you look at Gary Oliver. I mean, he's played higher level, but his goal record's not exactly the best. And then we signed Juan Allegri. At the time, he turned out to be good, but again, Partick Thistle fans said he's the worst player they've ever seen. So you're thinking, where are the goals going to come from for any of these strikers? We didn't have a Declan McManus. So that would be my main worry at the start of the season. Still is a worry, I suppose, now.
It is, certainly is. League Cup, Elsa. I mean, we did really, really well in that League Cup when you look back at it. I mean, and we went into I guess, one of the highlights of the season. We're talking about highlights of this season. It is the Hibs game. Because the performance at that point, were you thinking, right, we're going to go and win this league at a canter?
I never had the confidence that we were going to win the league, but I felt we looked like a team again. I think it was just that point you made earlier about being a bit of shape. I saw something in Aiden that I hadn't seen at all. Nesbitt last season, that was just, for me, sits best in the 10, essentially, moving around at will, and he played a blind of that line. But that said, the second half, we rode our luck a bit, but we defended well, and it actually felt for me like there's hope. That was the bit after just the abysmal end to the season before. When I stopped going to games, it was like that just felt for me like somebody kind of wanted to hear. Never thought we'd win, but I'd hope.
Yeah, I think a big moment in Scott. I think I've spoke to you about this before. It was, and I don't know why, but it just stands out to me. It was a tackle by Sean Mackey down on the left hand side, and it was a age since I've heard the stadium. An atmosphere in the stadium, like just roared at just a tackle, and I know you've talked about that before, Scott.
Yeah, I think there was a bigger cheer for that than we'd had in the last 3 or 4 seasons, to be honest with you. But that game itself raised the bar. Any expectations, we were desperate for something to cling on to something, and I think that game set the bar very high, and that was the standard that we should have set for the rest of the season. Obviously didn't turn out that way sporadically. We had good performances, but that one maybe was a false dawn that maybe raised our expectations too much.
Yeah.
But they can't take anything away from that performance. It was a really, really good performance, and it gave us all hope, as Elsa said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we, like you say, unbeaten in that League Cup campaign at the start of the season. But then we get into league business, and then it just felt, right, now we're back to reality. Starting off with a 0-0 against Montrose before going away to Airdrie and getting cuffed 4-0 off Airdrie, which was obviously, came back to us later in the season as well. We'll talk about it a bit later on. But Ross, I mean, not the start we were looking for, really.
No, definitely not in the league, John. And I think that you're right. The group stage of the cup had given us that bit of confidence. We'd held our own with Morton. We beat Hibs that night. As Elsa said, we rode our luck a little bit. We got through the sort of tough bogey tie against Bonnyrigg and then convincingly beat Clyde, I think it was. So we all had a huge optimism going into that. Granted, Montrose had the number on us the last couple of years. Actually, I've just remembered you placed a bet with your mate who was a Montrose fan. He owes you a Falkirk shirt for you.
He does. He's paying up, actually. He's going to pay up on the new Falkirk shirt because that was placed on one of the first podcasts. So yeah, he owes me a shirt.
That's right. So obviously we were really toothless that day, and we were very toothless the week after against Airdrie, as well, as you said, and set pieces coming into play, not handling it well. Obviously we went down. We didn't have our full complement of players on the park as well, which probably didn't help the scoreline, but it wasn't the best of starts.
Pete, were you worried by the first 2 games? Did all your optimism seep out?
No, not quite, John, I would say. That first game, Montrose, was a big disappointment, I would say, because, we came through the group stages of the League Cup pretty well. Good win against Hibs. Montrose could have snatched that game that night. The Airdrie game, Yeah, it was weird. I actually came away not feeling not too bad, which was quite surprisingly for a 4-0 defeat. I just felt kind of things went against us that day. In patches, we played not too bad. So, even after such a kind of indifferent start, I didn't actually feel completely flat by it all. I was quite confident that we would turn it around. And we eventually did start going on a bit of a kind of unbeaten run, beating, was it Peterhead, Edinburgh,
Yeah.
drawn with Dunfermline after that.
Yeah, so we went on to beat Peterhead, beat on to a great away day. And by the way, I love the fact they've got Edinburgh up in this league. And I know we're down in League One, but the Edinburgh away day is fantastic. So it's always good, especially when it's sunny. It's great. So we had that lovely sunny day in Edinburgh, even though it was absolute shite place to watch football, but it's a good day out. But we went beat Edinburgh 3-0. Then we went on to beat Queen of the South as well. And Queen of the South were the team that came down. So immediately you're thinking, okay, we've got a good chance here. But then it kind of, again, it's just, and this is how the season really progressed, apart from that little, purple patch in the middle of it. It was very much build, and then you, like, every fourth or fifth game, it was like, oh, for God's sake. And we had that against Kelty at home, Craig, when Agyeman absolutely, and glad to see he's our player now, absolutely ragdolled our defence. And just don't know where that came from, that performance. Oh no, that was the first Kelty game. I'm talking later in the season. The first Kelty game, we go away to Kelty, and for a team that have just come up, comfortably beaten 2-0 in that game, and I just don't know. Again, can you explain that performance? I don't know where that came from.
I remember before that game, when the lineups were announced, they mucked about with the defence. He had Liam McCann at right back, he had Mackey at left back, he had Henderson at centre back, and it was just all over the place. I don't think McCann went forward once that day because he's all left-footed. Mackey wasn't great at all at full back, and it just led to a downfall. Higginbottom and I think Cardle played that day. Both of them just terrorised their defence completely, along with Agyeman.
Yeah, I mean it was a poor result against Kelty, but then we moved on to East End Park. Again, great day, lovely sunny day, and Elsa, we absolutely done them in that first 45 minutes, and it should have been 1-0 going on 3.
I think that was a story that, I suppose, that lack of clinical edge was probably the story of that first encounter with them, and it almost set the tone for the rest of the encounters we had with them. It almost like you think to yourself, we play that well, but we still can't put 2 goals or 3 goals past any team. Does that change the mindset of the team? Is there a belief issue there? And then does that contribute to, as you say, this steady build, and then all of a sudden we fall off a cliff again? And it's like, that's been the story of the season for me, is that front end, not being able to put the ball in the net consistently, but not keeping the back door shut as well. I think, just to Craig's point, I think when he said earlier, you're worried, Craig, was coming into the season where we were still so far behind between the Airdries and the more, the Montroses of this world, is just not streetwise either. Being able to manage a game and put it to bed. That Dunfermline first half for me was case in point. Not even managing the first half to something that meant we had something to take into the second half and actually build on. And the second half, well, we know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, 1-1 at that point, Scott, it didn't seem like a bad result away at East End Park. When you look back at what was to come, I mean, if you walked away for 3 points East End Park at that point, you're thinking you're still going to be in it coming near the end of the season. And we should have been, shouldn't we have?
Of course, and it's missed opportunities, but there was too many missed opportunities. We were all believing at half time. I even had a Dunfermline acquaintance, I won't call him a friend, it's an acquaintance. Text me and said, you guys are streets ahead here, you're going to pummel us. And of course, it all turned round in the second half. They lifted their game. We went into our shell, and that kind of set the tone for all the games throughout the season against Dunfermline.
Yeah.
So if you go off to a win there, you're bouncing and you're on the upward curve. But we just didn't have that extra wee bit to get over the line.
Yeah,
it came back to haunt us many a time during the season.
I think it's come back to a point that Pete raised earlier on. This has been a big criticism of me on this podcast, was McGlynn's. It seemed to me that McGlynn, when we talked about, he brought in experienced manager, and then he seemed against the younger managers be outthought tactically. Cause it was throughout the season, it seemed to, until we started mixing it up with his diamond near the end of the season, it was like 4-3-3. And people like, McPake, Potter, McCabe, Bartley, all these young managers kind of outthought him tactically. Pete, is that something that you saw throughout the season as well? You kind of hinted at it earlier on.
Yeah, like I didn't expect it at all going into this season. Like I thought McGlynn would have their number, no problem. But yeah, as the season panned out, each of those managers you've just mentioned seem to have the upper hand on McGlynn. Well, saying that though, the loss to Queen of the South was just off the back of like the Ayr United game. So whether or not that was down to tactics, I'm not too sure. But certainly in the big games against Dunfermline and the Airdrie playoff games, yeah, those managers had their number, which was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the one that, Dunfermline, when you look across the results against season, we should have been walking away. And if you had walked away, like you say, Scott, it would have maybe set stand for the season. I mean, but 1-1 at East End Park at that point, thinking that's all right. You then go on a rerun, again, dropping points at Montrose, shock horror again, with the draw up there, which was disappointing at the time. And then we had that home game, which I alluded to earlier on, when we got beat at home 3-2 from Kelty Hearts. And again, it was that inconsistent. It was like 3 games, drop points, 3 games, drop points. One thing I would say at that start of that season, Ross, is former Callum Morrison. He was an absolute fire, and you look back at that now, and he wasn't even included when we put it out for our Player of the Year. He looked a shoo-in, but he didn't even get a nomination for our Player of the Year. I mean, and that seems to be the story of our season. It's like one player's in form, the other player's off form. So you had Callum Morrison, Aidan, both taking it in turns to be in form, and then Kai Kennedy latterly. And it's just, I mean,
I totally agree, John. At no point did we have not every player firing on all cylinders, but at no point did you think, oh, well, it's dangerous. We've got Kennedy on one wing, we've got Callum Morrison on the other wing, because they never ever did it together. And I don't know, you will have noticed how often towards the end of the season they were constantly getting chopped and changed on each wing to try and open them up. But they just, as you said, the younger managers and other managers just had our number, and we became a wee bit repetitive to play against. And when you do look at the how many wins we had, how many draws we had, see if you look at the number of draws, which is obviously pretty high, there was a vast majority of those we were winning. And as Elsa, I think it said, we weren't keeping the back door shut. We weren't scoring enough either. That Dunfermline game, as Scott said, or Simon said, we could have been 3-0 up at halftime, and without laying a glove on us. But then they were just glad to get there at halftime, review what they need to do. The same thing happened in November. They just wanted to, we all saw it, they just wanted to get the hell out of there with a point, and then they bloody won it at the end. So it was definitely the story of the season.
Yeah, I mean, going back, we're moving on, in between the Celtic game, we went away to Palmerston, got, 3 points, but at that point, Queen of the South were not, I mean, it was only lately in the season that Queen of the South managed to get themselves going with change of manager and what have you. But, I mean, Elsa, I can't, I was just livid. I was just so livid after that Dunfermline game where we took them at the Falkirk Stadium, and like Draw said, that last minute goal, that's at that point I really started to question the manager. You could take the draw away at Montrose, all that sort of stuff, but at that point I was like, this is just not good enough, and he's been found out in this game. Am I the only one that was really, I don't know, being angry at a Dunfermline game apart from later in the season, but I was livid after that game.
I don't know if I was angry so much as, I don't know whether I was questioning McGlynn at that point so much as questioning the attitude of the players, if I'm being honest with you. But then again, you then go back to, is that McGlynn's job to motivate them and make sure that motivation stays high for the whole game and actually turn up to begin with more than anything else? I've often wondered through the season whether or not McGlynn's always got a kind of, when he's at Raith Rovers as well, he had he was a 4-3-3. That's his kind of template, if you want to call it that. But I do wonder whether or not being outthought by other managers is down to the personnel he's got available to him as well. Because I think back to half one of the season, if you look at midfield, we had McGinn, and then we obviously didn't you know? You see McGinn was trying to start to flag a wee bit. 'Cause he was trying to do too much himself. And you look at the bench and you're going, right, who are we going to bring on here? I think Olu had got an injury at that point, you know. And I just never felt that we had. I think McGlynn was still trying to figure out who his best 11 was at that point. First off. But secondly, I'm not sure he knew if he had enough of personnel he wanted to, even if he wanted to change it to something else, he could. So, you know, you were saying earlier about the diamond coming back later in the season, coming in later in the season. It was almost like, right, we've got a new formation, let's try it every game, not just pick the ones where it would work. So if I go back to that Dunfermline game, angry maybe it was acceptance rather than anger. Kind of, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, Scott, did you think playoffs probably our best point, or did you still have optimism for winning the league?
I still had hope for winning the league, but it was the reality was kicking in that it was heading like the playoffs, and my hope was that we would finish strongly in second with momentum going into the playoffs. But at that point, the penny was kind of dropping that we weren't really. There was ingredients missing for actually winning the league. But you just hope that the playoffs, and I always said the playoffs could be a lottery, because you just had to look at Queen's Park last year. 22 points behind Airdrie, or 21 points behind Airdrie, 18 draws in their season, and they still went up. So you could have finished 20 points above Airdrie, still didn't mean anything.
Yeah. Do you think, you talked about the ingredients and Elsa's talked about the attitude of players. Pete, do you think a big problem was at centre half this season? Because it's, you know, we started the season, Henderson and Cote Donaldson were out injured. We used Mackey, we used Mackay at points. It was just it seemed to be at the weakest point of our team, I think.
Yeah, there was also other weak points in the team where I think, you know, you guys kind of touched on it earlier about the lack of consistency throughout the team, where when you were talking about the wingers, where one was in form and the other wasn't. I think that was kind of similar to the defence as well, where maybe Donaldson would have a really good game, then Brad Mackay wouldn't, or Henderson would have a good game, or Mackey wouldn't, or vice versa. There just seemed to be a lack of consistency everywhere actually in the team. I said like McCann was good for large points and he went off the boil, but yeah, I think the defence especially, you know, inability to keep a clean sheet and to stop leaking just really silly, weak goals was really costly over the course of the whole season. I think it was evident from day one that, you know, there was issues there, and we just never seemed to sort them out, which I don't quite understand why.
Pete, I totally agree with you there. See, you're talking, and I hate to go Star Wars, but like there was no balance at any point, not in the force, but within the team. Because like, you think about the right back situation, and I know we talk about him loads, but I thought I wasn't going to mention him today. But Ryan Williamson going off injured, like you're sitting thinking, oh right, see if he could just kick on this year, have a really good strong year, and then he scores a cracking goal. I can't remember if it was the same game or the next week, but he then goes off injured. We don't see him for months and months and months. We arse about with different ways of working. As Craig said, whatever reason they put McCann to right back at Kelty, we had Brad Mackay there, we had Yates there. I'm sure there was someone else that played at right back until Blaine Rowe came in as well. So it was just all over the place. And at no point did we ever have a settled, like starting, I don't mean starting, settled starting 11, but like the back four was always chopping and changing, the midfield was always chopping and changing. He didn't know where Gary Oliver needed to be, whether he was up front in the hole. As it turns out, probably better in the hole. We then missed Allegri as soon as he left as well, which I know will come on to the January situation, but at just no point did we feel settled at all.
Agreed, yeah.
Aye. I mean, after Dunfermline, we talked about the rage Dunfermline. We went on that mid-season run, which was great. 12 games unbeaten. We dropped some silly points over that time, right enough. You know, if you'd cast your mind back to the 3-3 away to Clyde, you know, the game at home against Airdrie, which we should have went on to win. And then that last-minute penalty, which Alloa got against us on that February night. Aside from that, though, I mean, it was silly points dropped, so you're dropping 6 points there. But that run that we went on, in that patch, where, you know, we also had the Scottish Cup on the go as well. It was just, it felt like the team was coming together. It really did feel. I mean, you talked about the issues with the team, but at that point, it seemed we had a settled team, and we're grinding out wins and winning games that we would have lost in previous seasons. And I mean, that's when I think it's the hope that destroys you. They always say, but at that point, you're thinking we've actually got a chance here. Craig, was I the only one that was optimistic at that point, thinking we could win the title?
No, I don't think so. I think you're right about the balance. Balance up front kind of came for me at that point, because you had Allegri starting who would tire the defence, but with his constant movement, his power. Then you would bring on Burrow to a tiring defence, and he would just finish the job off. I'm thinking like that Queen of the South game at the stadium, 5-2.
Yeah.
Allegri gets a goal, he gets an assist, he gets subbed, and then on comes Burrow, and the defenders are like, oh God. They're up against Burrow, they're up against Morrison, and they're absolutely knackered, and then we go on and win it so easily and comfortably. And then when Allegri left, I don't think we really got that balance. We're chopping and changing with everybody.
It's a name that we probably forget about, is Juan Allegri. I thought it's Ross, like, he, really calling it a game, and I don't think we replaced him in a like Benedict, because he was really, starting to come into his own. We saw him at the start of the season when he was tripping over his own feet and what have you, but his hold-up play and just with his back to goal, and that's something I think we missed in the latter part of the season when he left us.
No, we definitely did. And as I think Craig mentioned it as well, he just had a bit of a power about him as well, running, taking on defenders. Hopefully, this is what we're going to see in Aggie-Man. With that signing, hopefully he'll be that sort of big, powerful guy that's going to do that, whether it's running in from the wing or up front. But we did miss it, and the replacements that were just simply not good enough. And I feel you've obviously got Jordan Allen there, who we signed, albeit not a lot of money, but we signed him for money, and then you didn't see where he was going to fit in. Again, we're hoping he's going to fit into something next year. And then you had, I don't even want to say his name, you had the big lad on loan from Ross County, and that just...
Go on, say his name!
Well, Mr. Shite. He was just awful, and he didn't do anything that I can remember of a positive note in a Falcons.
He scored against Peterhead!
John, I would have scored that day. Come on.
Elsa, Elsa, what did you make of the January recruitment?
I was a wee bit, when I heard Jordan Allen, I was like, oh my God, thank the Lord, we've got a striker here. But I just think the point that you guys have already made, it was like, well, where's he going to play? And it was like, I can remember the last time we played against us, he terrorised us. I was like, thank the Lord, we found somebody to batter everybody else now, but it never happened. And I was like, what's going on here? I mean, you looked at you come into the stadium on a Saturday and you would hear the team getting announced and you go, really? What's going on? That for me was probably the biggest disappointment of we signed a player who clearly got goal scoring prowess.
Top goal scorer at the time when we signed him.
We never used them. I think I'm probably a wee bit, maybe not in the same vein as you, Ross, but yeah, I agree with you. I have to say I did not understand what Matty Wright's position was, but then again, I think when I was on the podcast earlier in the season, I was having exactly the same moans and groans about Gary Oliver. So actually, it felt like I just exchanged one whipping boy for another one, which was probably unfair. I think for me, it felt promising. It felt like, right, we've got some real potential here, and I think particularly Blaine Rowe, that was the one that was for me the thing that made the difference, because I think one of the things that I noticed before he came in was, we're talking about balance, like everything was going through McCann up that left-hand side. And you just felt like there was never going to be any, back to a bit of a teams working us out. You thought, great, right, we've got two outs now, so if we get two partnerships going on each side, we can switch it a bit more, maybe be a bit less predictable. Got a goal scorer there, happy days. Well, it didn't work out that way, did it? So, yeah, I thought it was a promising transfer window, but still the nuts and bolts weren't all fitting together the way we expected. And the fact that our defence was shy probably was still the Achilles heel we had.
I have just a follow-on to that, Elsa. And John, I don't know if you and I have already had this conversation, and I'm giving you something new here as well. But see, when Blaine Rowe signed, like Elsa said, I was really optimistic because his first few games, you're thinking, right, he looks good, he's going forward, he's got a bit of connection now with Callum Morrison as well. That then went off the boil. Like, he wasn't getting forward. There was no relationship there between him and Morrison. And the rumour I heard just recently was that they two did not get on at all.
Really?
Yeah. Now, if that is the case and it's true, you actually kind of saw that on the pitch because there wasn't really any interaction. Like, remember when, I'm going to say his name again, Ryan Williamson and Callum Morrison were forever interlinking? That very rarely happened with Blaine Rowe and Callum
Very
Morrison.
good point, yeah. It's a very good point because they started off so well together, and like you say, Ross, and then I'd not heard that rumor. It was a Falkirk Daft exclusive from Ross Wayne that Callum Morrison and Blaine Rowe weren't pals. There you go. Scott, talk about Jordan Allen there. Do you think the system went against them that McGlynn played?
Without a doubt, I don't see him as a lone striker. It's definitely not a lone striker. He's a poacher. And there was a period before we signed him that we were creating a lot of chances. We just needed somebody to put the ball in the net. But he's got to play in a two, surely. And at that point, we weren't playing in a two, and that's why I found it a kind of strange signing in hindsight. And I remember one of McGlynn's interviews, he says, "Well, forwards were actually carrying one too many," and it was a strange statement. I mean, we weren't putting the ball in the net, and you've got too many strikers. But Jordan Allen, I've got hopes for next season. I think the likes of him coming from part-time football and McIver as well. I know they've both been full-time previously, but with a pre-season under their belt, full-time training, you're hopefully going to see the best of these guys.
We'll get into recruitment. I want to talk a wee bit of that and kind of our thoughts about next season. I mean, but getting back to, we're in that purple patch, which was really good. And in terms of that, we had the cup run in the background going as well. The victory against Wick away, Alwa, that important away victory there. Becoming the hero, the fairy tale villains when we beat Darvel. But then we come into optimism. We're flying, we've got all these wins under our belt, and then we come East End Park, which is basically where our season really ended, in terms of any promotion hopes. And I talked about being really angry. I don't know why. After that game, I just felt absolute apathy. Because I don't think Falkirk turned up that night. I can't explain what happened. I really can't explain. Was it the wrong team? I mean, we can talk about the goal not being over the line, but I don't think it would have mattered on the night because they had our number. And I don't know, with 10,000 people there watching the game, I just don't know what happened. But that's where the season ended for me. Craig, you were there that night. What did you make of it?
Shite.
There we are.
It just highlighted to me that we might have experience in the team, but we don't have leadership apart from McGinn. You could see through Dunfermline's team, they've got Benedictus, they've got Chalmers, just good leadership in their team. We don't have that. Like, take McGinn out, who's your next leader? Because I see people saying, "Oh, we need an experienced centre half." No, we've got experienced centre halves. We need leaders at centre half. There's a difference. And that night, Sean, for me, we didn't have any leaders on the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, the wheels really came off the season league-wise then, Ross, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. We didn't turn up at all. Mentally, physically, it just didn't turn up. The fans did. The fans turned up, 2,700 sellout behind the goals. The fans were up for it. There was loads of noise, big atmosphere, and you could almost tell within the first few minutes that we were not up for that fight that night. And as Craig said, the leadership within their team, just you saw it a mile off, not just in that game, but in the previous games as well. That for me was my angry night. I think the November thing, I probably mentally still thought, oh, there's a long way to go. Yeah, they're 5 points in front, I think it was by that point, so it can be clawed back. But for me, the anger was that night because we had sold ourselves short, and after the massive run we had been on, to just have a night like that was just completely unacceptable. And it wasn't just on the players. I thought the interview, and I love him to bits, but the interview that John McGlynn gave after that game was mind-boggling that night as well. Didn't understand it.
I mean, when you look on the park, we're just, there wasn't the fight, there wasn't spirit, wasn't that leadership we've talked about earlier. I mean, after that, the 9 league games, I mean, we're back to fucking Martin Rennie and Paul Sheeran form when you look at it. 9 games, and in those 9 games, we've drawn 4, lost 2, and won 3. It's real. to end a season like that with such disappointment. On the other side of things, though, and I don't know if it played into it, was the fact we had that magical night against Ayr at the stadium where it was just, I guess when we go around here and ask for your highlights at the end of it, it'll stand up there as being one of the highlights of the season when we go to and beat Ayr at the stadium. Do you think, Elsa, that played against us in the league, though, that Scottish Cup run?
I personally, funnily enough, Craig and I were on something earlier on this year, last month, the cup fight, the cup semi-final day, having exactly the same conversation. I would have dumped the cup every day of the week to get out of this league.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know how players think, so I can't comment. But it felt like a distraction. It was almost like, I don't know if it was the emotional intensity that came with winning a game like that, and then what that meant. It's really funny because when I think back to the last season Yogi was with us, and remember the cup final, and it almost like it made up for the fact we'd had such a shite season in the league. This was not that situation. We needed to be focused 100% on getting out this bloody league. So for me, it felt like, much as it was a really great night, and much as I was looking forward to going to the cup game against Inverness, I don't know what happened, but that obviously happened around the same time as the Fairmont match with that abysmal away game. I was a bit like Ross. That was where I kind of got angry, because I thought you can turn up for the games that don't really matter, but the games that really matter, we need you to show something. And it was kind of funny because it was one of the, I don't know which interview it was, just back to your point, Ross, I don't know, it was one of the interviews McGlynn made, and I'd seen some chat on Twitter about it where he indicated that he felt that the team were young. I'm not sure it's young. I think it's that experience of being in high pressure situations they don't necessarily have. It's the ability to carry yourself in a way that you block out all the noise and your only focus is winning that bloody football match. It was a bit like, and that for me is probably missing. So that was a long-winded response to your question, John. Sorry, but I would have left the cup run behind and just won the league. That's all I wanted.
Scott, on that actually, Scott, big criticism, and it's not just from Falkirk supporters, but it's from supporters that McGlynn, of clubs McGlynn's previously managed, is he doesn't get it right on the big games. Now, we saw that probably against Dunfermline, like you say. We certainly saw it in the playoff games, which we'll talk about in a bit. And did we see that against Inverness as well in the semi-final?
I think so, to an extent, yep. We maybe didn't get the setup right, and 5 minutes into the game or a goal down.
Of course, the first game that VAR was used by Falkirk, and obviously it goes against us in the first 5 minutes.
I think I looked at the clock at the time, 4 minutes 52 or something like that, and we're done with VAR. But we can't blame just VAR. We were well beaten on that day. You're right, he's got a great track record in the big games. As Elsa was saying, any other year as a Falkirk supporter, win one cup in a lifetime. That I've always said that. But this season, we knew we weren't good enough to go and win the cup. On the other side of that, we needed the finance. So you were juggling, you were spinning the plates to try and balance everything. But yeah, I agree if the priority was the league, and I think possibly the players, there's a lot of young players there. First time at Hampden, could play in a cup final. It's been maybe distracted them somewhat, but the priority certainly this year was the league, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the league, like I said, just petered out there at the end, apart from we had the 2 wins there at the end, which were kind of dead rubber matches anyway against Alloa and Peterhead. But the league just, after that Dunfermline game, it petered out. But we're all going, right, playoffs, right, we're going to, if we finish second, we've got a good chance in the playoffs. Bearing in mind, we're all hoping it would have been maybe Alloa we played in that first game, and that maybe Hamilton would have done the job against Airdrie, but it was Airdrie. And Ross, it was one of the worst nights experience. I was obviously at Duran, so I didn't experience it, but I just watched the goals rain in. It was one of the worst 45 minutes as a supporter of Falkirk.
Yeah, no, it was. Well, full 90, John, if I'm being honest.
Full 90. What, would you put that as the worst game you've ever experienced as a Falkirk supporter?
Yeah, for me.
Elsa?
Yeah.
worst game you've ever experienced, or is there anyone that tops that?
I wasn't there. I wasn't at the game, unfortunately, because I was working. All I saw was the highlights, if you want to call it that. But from what I saw on the TV, I'm with Ross. Absolutely shocking.
Scotty?
Well, I've still got the Queen's Park 6-0, but no, the Airdrie game's certainly vying for the top spot. Aye,
Pete?
very bad.
Yeah, it's a tough question. That actually, I've seen a lot of shite over the years. Yeah, it was bad. I think because of what was riding on it, you could maybe argue that was the worst. Like Scott says, that 6-0 away to Queen's Park was horrific. There was so many bad games under Rennie, Sheeran, McKinnon, Hartley. I'm trying to think back to older managers.
This is like a horror show.
Yeah,
where's the alcohol?
No, it was bad. It was bad, really awful. But then I still kind of had that hope. Like I thought, 4 goals, there might, a miracle could happen. You saw it with Sheffield Wednesday against Peterborough. They managed to overturn a 4-goal deficit. So I still had that slight hope going into the second game.
Yeah, but Craig, you're the youngest amongst us. Was that the worst experience as a Falkirk supporter for you?
The Queen's Park one for me was
Queen's Park's worst, right? So Queen's Park's up there, yeah.
See that Queen's Park day? It was bad. It was hell, right? 2 things for me make it not as bad. One, it was a December day in Glasgow, so we were pretty drunk because it was Christmas time and stuff, right? Because that numbed the pain of both the match and post-match. The second thing was it meant change happened. So, I had zero expectation of that Sheeran episode of turning anything for the rest of the season. So I know we gave it to Martin Rainey and that never worked either. But it meant there was change coming. For this game, the magnitude of the game is a playoff game. For me, it was just it eclipsed that. And it was anger, it was shock, it was disappointment. I don't know if I spoke about this on last week's podcast, but obviously my dad at the time wasn't too great and he was in hospital, and I remember going in the next day to see him and he's like, what was the score? And I was like, you don't want to know. And he's like, no, tell me. And he could not believe that scoreline happened. So for me, that sort of tipped it over the Queen's Park one. But yeah, as Pete says, we've had some bad. So for it to be worse than some of the drubbings we've had, it was a tough night.
I think for me as well, what pissed me off the most is, like Pete said, you look at Sheffield Wednesday and what they did in their game. I think if we went back 5-2, we hadn't been so fucking stupid at the end of the match, and it went back 5-2 at the stadium, you've got more of a chance when there's 4 goals in it. You're on. But what pissed me off was just the attitude at the stadium as well, from the players. They had sacked it off. There was only a few people on that part that you could tell it meant someone. Finn Yates being one of them, and you could tell the boy walked off the park just about crying, and you can tell that's the kind of player we need at the club. And we talk about leadership, we talk about experience at the club, but that's the kind of player I want to see playing for Falkirk. But we're kind of 2-3 weeks on from it now. How are we all feeling about John McGlynn? Because there was a lot. The support were split after those 2 matches. Half of the support, judging on social media and comments you've seen everywhere, half the support wanted him out, half wanted to keep him. Elsa, let's come to you first. Where are you on McGlynn for next season?
I would have kept him anyway. I think the rebuild job was so huge. I think just back to Craig's point at the very top of the podcast, there was we knew we had a big gap to fill from where we were last season, and I think for me he deserves at least another summer transfer window and potentially another January to see what he can really do. But that also means he has to learn. There has to be. It's not just learn and say the same things again. There has to be a change. Definition of madness: do the same thing, expect a different result. So. Absolutely support him. I'm not one of these people that tends to throw the towel in with managers early, because the way I look at it is nobody goes to work to do a bad job. Never met MD in 35 years of working, and I think that's the case. And I think the same with the players as well. I'm a dead half full kind of person. So hopefully this season's our season.
Scott, where are you standing on it?
Yep. I was for keeping him. I was for keeping him anyway. just echo the things that Elsa said, but I've also spoke to, you get caught up in the emotion, certainly after the playoff games, and sometimes you can't view it rationally because of the emotion. So I've spoke to 2 or 3 people with the support. One an ex-player, one that plays a high-level amateur football, another guy that used to help run a decent amateur club, and they all say you should stick with him. It's good to sometimes hear an outside view without the emotion taking over. But certainly, I don't think anybody is 100%. 100%, I want to totally and utterly behind McGlynn. Some people want maybe 70-30, 60-40. But I think now that the dust has settled, the sensible amongst us can see that this is another transfer window at least. But he's got to get off to a good start and he's got to deliver. And I think we all know it's boom or bust this season. Last chance saloon. We've got to do it. We've got to deliver. And it's as straightforward as that.
Pete, do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I really like McGlynn. I think he comes across really well. I met him a couple of times at the Falkirk Supporter Society meeting at the start of the season, and then at the awards night, we had a nice wee chat with the guy. He was really nice. He lives and breathes football. You know, before I think the Peterhead game, he was up seeing, was it Arbroath versus one of the potential playoffs, Arbroath and Hamilton Accies. You know, that was before Peterhead away, last game of the season. I know for a fact he came back from his holiday early at the start of last season to, you know, because he wanted to get working with players earlier and just get settled into the club. So, yeah, no, but I think he has to maybe look at his own performance as well this year and review it. You know, there were games where, as everyone's touched on here, it was so rigid in his formation. You need to mix it up sometimes, maybe a wee bit earlier. I think, was it Edinburgh at home in the final quarter of the season? We're losing 1-0. It was a horrific performance. And he just kind of stuck with the same formation all game. It was like, thought, well, why not just try 2 up front in that game? So many games like that. But yeah, hopefully with this transfer window, he'll have a better idea what he needs, a bit more flexibility, albeit less of a budget. But there's maybe players he's managed now to get rid of that he didn't want at the start of the season. So yeah, I'm totally behind the guy. Hopefully, hopefully he does turn it around.
Craig, is it a full house then? Are you sticking with McGlynn?
I am. There's a few things for me though, because like kind of Pete just said there, he needs to lose this kind of almost arrogance about changing. Like for me, if I'm the Falkirk manager and we're 3-0 down after 15 minutes, I'm going 5 at the back. Might not be pretty on the eye, but at least try and take it to the second leg and give us a fighting chance. Don't just let it keep going and going and going. Try and stem the tide. Change it, go 5-3-2, do something. I think he needs to get the signings right. I think, as I said, we need that leadership. I don't think I can probably put my mortgage on we won't win the league unless we sign some leaders. 100% won't win the league or even get promoted for that fact. And I think he's also got more pressure on him this year. I mean, that statement that was released by the board, I think last week, there was one of the lines that I read it as if to say he needs to get us promoted or he's out the door, which I think we knew anyway. However, just reading the way they worded it, it was like massive pressure right away, which I'm sure he already knows that we need to win promotion this year anyway. But yeah, he needs to deliver really early on. We can't have a slow start.
Well, let's talk about next season. We've seen the players that have left the club. Just Ryan Williamson, Stephen Hetherington, Craig McGuffey, Roman Burrell, Paddy Martin, Blair Stead, Finlay Malcolm, Lennon Walker and Kyle Connolly all left the club. Is there anyone out of that lot, Ross, that you'd like to have kept?
No, if I'm being honest, I know there was a lot of chat about Burrell, but he didn't actually. He was never consistent when he eventually did get a run in the team. I'm not convinced his head was with us either, which might be in part down to his relationship with the management team as well. I don't know. We'll probably never know. But no, there's no one there. And in terms of the signings we've made, I'm really quite happy with Aguiman in terms of what I've seen from him. I think he's the type of player that's caused us bother and he has caused others bother, so I think that's good as well. Don't know a lot about McKeever. Obviously, he's a big lad and Where is he going to play? Is he going to play up front? Is he going to be on his own? Is he going to play with Jordan Allen? Which obviously these are some of the things that we don't know. But this is the exciting part of this season as well, because there's obviously the rumours about this, that, and the next thing. I don't know if the Scott Arfield thing has any legs in it whatsoever. But
I can probably put brakes on the Scott Arfield thing. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Are you placing money on this?
It's not going to happen.
Right. Okay.
It's not going to happen. I'll tell you why, but I can't tell you here. But I'll tell you why. I wish I could tell you.
Wait now. I'm going to put two and two together. Your pal was with him recently, wasn't he?
Couldn't comment. Couldn't possibly comment.
Right, I'll take that as a no then. But as Craig said, recruitment's key. It's massive, massive. And I think he's got this window. He deserves this window for me to make the changes. I don't think he'll get another window if this season starts badly, though. I think he'll have quarter one. If there's one thing I took for the Q&A last week with Jamie, was that, and I think Pete might have said it as well. Scott said it. This is the year we have to go up. Otherwise, there's going to be massive change at the club, and I think if we're being very, very serious, like as in deadly serious about the consequences, then we have to get off to a great start. And if we don't, there will be change within the dugout.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously lost our lone players as well. Blaine, Rowe, Archie Meekinson, who didn't even kicked one ball for us, I think. I don't even got to touch the ball. The troublesome place we've been having, Brian Kinnear, the goalkeeper, goes. Matty Wright, your pal, goes. The one player, I think, the two players that really stood out for us across the season from the lone point of view was Kai Kennedy, who obviously came into a rich vein of form in the turn of the year. He'll be a miss, as will wee Max Kucheriavki, who for a player his age looked like the kind of player you need in midfield, took everything on his shoulders. Your favourite, the new Latape, Ross, so big misses there. Elsa, where do we need to strengthen for next season, and is there any names you want to throw out there?
Oh, crikey. There's names I'd want to throw out there, but let's be honest, we're not going to get them, so I'll keep that to myself. I'll just be laughed out the place. I think it's back to some of the things that you hear, maybe cliche, but it's got to be a spine of the team, and I agree with what Craig said as well. Leadership can't just be down to Stephen McGinn to be the one that's talking and nagging and cajoling and encouraging. So goalkeeper, a centre-half partnership for somebody with either, if we're keeping Paul Donaldson, then fine, but we need somebody that's going up again beside him, keep him steady and through games, and I don't want to see it changing. I'd like a stable centre-half partnership. I think we need a how can I say it, a Will Volks or a Tom Taiwan. I'd like to see somebody with a bit of dig in midfield that's got a bit of guile about them as well. And we've got some strikers now. I'd like to see them play. So there you go.
There we go. Scott, what about you?
Three things I had before you even got to tactics or players or any of the rest of it is physicality, leadership, that we've all said, and a better mentality. And that's before you even get to formations or any of the rest of it. If we haven't got these three ingredients, we're going to struggle again. Having said that, I mean, the first two signings were made. Big lads, he's addressing the physical side of it. I think he'll know that. When we played the last game against Dunfermline, I think we had 4 or 5 guys under weirder than me. And then you add in your Olivers and Nisbets. We didn't have a lot of physicality in that game. So I think he's addressing that. I'd like to see, as Elsa said, some of the best defensive partnerships was when we had an old head, Darren Dodds, Presley, McCracken, organising the defence. I'd like to see something like that coming in. We probably need another winger if we're not getting Kennedy back, and of course Mayor Dig in the midfield. But a bigger team with leadership and a stronger mentality. That sums it up for me.
Peter, Craig, is there anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say, what do you think will happen with Morrison? Do you think he will look to move on?
That's interesting. I don't know. I think I think it all depends on how he's going to set up next season. Now, this is the big question: does he keep going at 43? Bearing in mind, Jordan Allen works as a 2. Does he go with that diamond then in that case? Is that the way they're going to set up next season? If so, where does Morrison fit into that system? Where does Nesbitt fit into that system? Does he go with the two up front? Does he go with McIver and Allen up front? Or does he go Agyeman and Allen up front with Morrison or just behind? Then you have Aidan Nesbitt, McGinn, and then, like you say, that experienced kind of central midfielder in there, experienced centre half, experienced goalkeeper. I mean, that's, for me, is how I would set up, but I'm not a football manager.
John, I don't know if I'm going to be controversial here, but say if someone came in for him, I wouldn't stand in his way. He's been part of he's not the only one, but he's been part of a team now that's failed on 3 occasions to get out of this league. He's no good enough. We need better. I think that's clear. Can we get better? I don't know, but we need better.
Craig, Morrison, yes or no?
I would keep him for this level. I mean, if we were to get promoted next year, I don't know if I'd be renewing that contract. There's a reason why no one's come in from this yet, unless the reported Dundee interest was true, but I don't think they actually came in from, because I don't think he delivers at a higher stage. I think in terms of other signings, I would be going for McDonald, the goalkeeper. I think he's a good goalkeeper. I know there's chat about what happened in the cup final. However, he still played at a higher level. He's a leader at the end of the day. So yeah, I think he's an absolute no-brainer to have if the option was there.
Apparently he's been freed by Wraith Rovers, so I mean,
and Bobby Geddes has left us as the goalkeeping coach as well.
So there he comes. That absolutely ticks a row. Right, let's go through. I'm not going to talk about the Lowlights, because if I tell we go the Lowlights, we know exactly where we're all going to go when it's the 6-2 against Airdrie. But let's talk about the highlights and the optimism of the season. Elsa, what's been your highlight?
Can you come back to me?
We'll come back to Elsa. Scott, what about you?
Probably the purple patch we had in the middle and the cup run, I would say. My mate described the season as going to see a Paul Weller tribute. He starts off with his own material at the start, plays the jam greatest hits in the middle, and finishes off with Style Council B-sides.
I love that analogy. That wins for me.
The encore, of course, is the bitterest pill. So that would say that for me.
Brilliant. Love that. Pete?
Highlights. To be honest, I've had quite a lot of highlights this year. You know, I've only missed like 3 games all season in the league, missed a few cup games, and most of the times I've been going to those games, I've had my kids with me. So just spending that time with either the 2 boys or my 3 boys, or having my dad with me as well, just having us all together, going on the away trips, seeing the excitement, seeing the joy when they get to meet players and stuff. So there's been quite a lot of like highlights on a personal level. But in terms of the football, I would probably go with last minute winner away to Kelty. That was I know it's only Kelty, but you know, they were our bogey team, and it kind of it was just sweet getting a last minute winner against them, because they were awful for time wasting, just general shithousery. Yeah, so that'll be mine.
What about you, Craig?
High point, Airdrie United game, 100%. Considering we started off terribly, we went a goal down, and you're thinking, right, maybe the Dunfermline game the previous week still in their mind. Do we have the mentality of the ball to come back? I know it was a wee bit of luck with them missing the penalty, us getting the deflected winner, but just to actually have the mentality to come back and the celebrations and stuff, that was definitely the best for me.
And Ross?
Definitely air from the cup, John. League-wise, you know, I was having a think about this. I know we won a lot of games, especially in that middle part, but I don't think there was I don't think there was any big games where I thought, oh, this is amazing. But the Friday night game against Queen of the South, in December, really enjoyed that game. It was a miserable night. We came back from being behind as well. It was a good atmosphere in the ground. So for me, that's probably the league sort of highlight in there.
I missed that one as well, because it was at Mogwai. Jesus Christ.
Oh, Jesus. Well, but off the pitch, just as Pete said, I've actually seen it. It feels like a bit different with the fans this year as well. Over a few years of horrible situations, and we've not escaped horrible situations this year, but there's been far better ones. The crowds have been fantastic. The atmosphere's been far better as well in the most Hopefully recruitment will be good this summer as well, and we can kick on. But the other big thing, John, is us doing this podcast. I think it's been like, I've really enjoyed kind of dissecting the games and having fans on, and it's not been players that we've been interviewing. It's been people just like us that just want to talk about the club and the team. And yeah, so for me, that was a big highlight too.
Oh, that's nice. Elsa, you thought of one?
I'm actually, again, going to agree with Ross. I've done this all season. Can't agree with it, but I'm with Craig. I think for the match for me was their United match. I think the atmosphere in the stadium that night was... I'm thinking back to the Hoosty days when we had the playoffs against Hibs and the nights, those nights, and that for me topped it. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I thought they were brilliant nights. So I think that's the match for me that stands out. But I'm going to agree with everything Ross has said. I think for me it's that connection. Again, feeling like the fans are part of the club and the players are part of the club and the board get us. It's not perfect, but we're definitely in a different place. And I'd say that's my highlight.
I'm going to see Craig McGuffey's goal, by the way, because that was just I don't think you'll ever see a better goal ever scored again at Falkirk Stadium. Jesus Christ, that was amazing.
John, see whilst that is a good choice, I can't think of Craig McGuffey's goal now without thinking about what John McGlynn's doing.
Right, okay, we'll just skip
stadium.
over. We'll skip over that part.
They go hand in hand there, if I'm being honest.
But listen, guys, that's the season done. What are the expectations then for next season? I think we've spoke about it here. It's promotion or bust, isn't it?
Yes.
Who do you think are going to be our biggest threats in that league, Ross?
This will sound cheesy, John, but it's ourselves. I think if we recruit right, we make the right signings, the right mentality is there, we'll win the league. And the only team that will stop us is ourselves not doing that in terms of who's in the league this year. I think it's us that will determine our year.
Craig?
I did. If you had asked me a week ago, I would have said Queen of the South. But I'm starting to edge towards Cove. I don't know why.
I looked at their squad list and I thought the exact same thing when I looked at their squad list. I mean, you just hope that the age goes against them when you look. But what we've been talking about, we look at experienced heads, Shea Logan, Megison, Reynolds, who else did it? Fraser Fivey they've got as well, haven't they? It's still under contract and you go, oh.
That's before they recruit as well. We've been full time. They'll probably be paying more money now. Mm-hmm. So that's before they recruit any new players as well. So yeah, I'm going Cove.
If they keep Hartley though, you never know. What about you, Elsa?
I was going to say Queen of the South probably for me. I think just the form they had in the latter part of the season. I'd say, but I think Ross has made a really good point. It's in our hands. We should be able to win this league without. And I suppose you kind of want to say we should do what Dunfermline did last season. That's what we do. Which means it doesn't matter what anybody else does. We just need to take care of our own game.
Consistency. Scott?
I think Cove, obviously, they've announced they're going full time, but I think the way they worded it was they're going to be hybrid next season. We've still got a lot of part-time players under contract, so in a way you could view it as a transitional season, so that might work in our favour. They're still going to be a threat. I think Hartley said himself, the age profile is too high. So all these guys that you've just mentioned, he's maybe no fully wanting them on board. But as boom or bust, we've just got to focus on ourselves, tunnel vision, and go for it because we know what's at stake here. Queen of the South will be there or thereabouts. Hamilton, I think they are the main man's just sold out to one of the other directors, so I don't know where they are cash wise. But we can't worry about anybody else. We've got to just focus on ourselves and go for it.
Pete, finishing off.
Yeah, I'll agree with Ross actually. Yeah, agree with Ross. It'll be ourselves that'll fuck this up.
Let's hope we don't.
Let's hope we don't.
Yeah.
Let's hope we don't. Listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the season review, and thanks for being great pundits across the year in Falkirk Daft. We'll have to have you back on next season to hopefully talk about nicer things, and hopefully this time at the end of next season when we're doing it all again, we're talking about us as a championship team. Just want to say, round off the season then, say thanks to everyone who's subscribed to the YouTube channel, has followed us on social media, You know, 75,000 listens across the season. What started off as just what we thought, maybe 100 people, maybe our mates will listen, maybe our mums and dads will listen, you never know. It's really, you know, it's turned into a bigger thing than we thought it would be. So listen, thanks to every single one of you that's downloaded or watched us on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Would you like to say anything, Ross?
No, just echo that, John. I think it's, as I mentioned 5 minutes ago, the fans are what was the theory behind this, is just the fans talking about their team, and that's what we've been doing, and long may it continue.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you want to sponsor next season, however, you can't sponsor the podcast. Just drop us a message, sales at falkirkdaft.co.uk. You can sponsor it for the whole season. You know, very reasonable. We're very reasonable. So if you want to jump on board to sponsor the podcast, we really appreciate that for next season, because we'll be back here next season talking again about League One, unfortunately. But if in the meantime as well, if you want to come along as well, we'll see you at the Russell Lappy night at the Dobby Hall on the 22nd of June, which is not far away now. We have to start thinking about questions to ask Russell.
I actually forgot we were doing that, so this
you better get in the calendar. So we'll see you down there.
Yeah.
We'll see you down there on the 22nd of June, and if not, we'll see you next season. Fingers crossed. And what do we say, Ross?
Expect unexpected, everybody.
Thank you, and good night.